order this meeting of the Southside Network Authority. We're going to start with a roll call. So, Mr. Crummins, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. DeBerry, it's back
It's
to you.
holiday season there. Ms. Vitale.
Here.
Ms. McClellan.
Here.
Ms. Chapman.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Alternate members, Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Here.
Ms. Weitzel. Mr. Hayes.
Present.
Dr. Kirikou.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Okay. Okay, just a note, we received official correspondence from Portsmouth, so from Mr. Hayes, so he's now.
Excellent. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right. So looking at the agenda, do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
So moved.
Second? Thank you very much. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving forward with item number 3, public comment, not related to the PPE. Do we have any public comment today? Seeing none, moving over to number 4. Are there any public comments related to the PPE?
We're going to turn it over to Mike just for a second. Let him
Okay.
walk through the process.
All right.
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to make the staff report, and I will invite either Mr. DeBerry or Mr. Crum to butt in if I manage to miss anything. This is, we're opening up a public hearing for the public to give comment upon the entry of an interim agreement under the Public-Private Education Facilities and Infrastructure Act of 2002, or PPEA. By way of background and history here, back in May of 2021, we issued, by we meaning the authority, issued an RFP for potential partners to provide any or all of design, build, finance, operate, maintain, and maintaining, including commercializing a fiber optic ring, of which at that point we had about a 60% design. That RFP closed in August of 21, and we received 4 proposals following evaluation by an evaluation committee appointed by the board. The evaluation committee determined, and the board ultimately agreed, that GTS, Global Technical Systems, was responsive and was apparently the best value and the best to move forward with further negotiations with, and rejected the other 3 proposals. We were in detail phase negotiations through much of 2022. The main things that we had a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth in terms of pinning down the factual background was both in terms of commercialization and in terms of structure of the ultimate relationship. We have now reached the point of having an interim agreement, and an interim agreement under the PPEA is an agreement where you enter into a formal relationship. You are no longer just studying things. You have narrowed it down to, we have an intent, although not yet a contractual requirement, to form a long-term relationship with a contractor. That's what an interim agreement means. It means that you've narrowed it down to a list of things that you consider to be contingencies that still need to be studied or still need to have negotiation to narrow down in order to finalize what's called a comprehensive agreement, which will govern your long-term relationship. We have at this point negotiated an interim agreement draft. I would say that this draft is probably 90% of the way to having something that is approvable by the Board of Directors. We are here for the public hearing. The public hearing sets us up so that we have 30 days, during which period we can receive further public comments, and during which period Stephen and I will continue negotiating with the team from GTS and Smart City Capital in order to have a 100% final agreement that we're comfortable bringing to you for approval. After the interim agreement is approved, then we would go through and we would drill down those contingencies with the objective of reaching a comprehensive agreement by early summer. The interim agreement provides that the Southside Network Authority would retain ownership of the 119.4 mile ring. We would form a special purpose entity along with the GTS Smart City Capital Consortium. That special purpose entity is basically an ownership and financing box, and it's a way for defining relationships through forming an LLC and an organizational agreement for that LLC. That LLC would lease 96 strands of the ring. It would have the ability to have future takedowns of fiber at prices that are defined by formula set forth in the set forth in general terms in the interim agreement, will be set down with more definiteness in the comprehensive agreement. The lease price is $2 million a year. The SPE also would be responsible, and by SPE, again, I mean there would be a contractor who would actually be the person doing it, would be responsible for carrying out the maintenance. The initial term of the comprehensive agreement is foreseen as being 5 years. There is an 18-month out clause, which if GTS is meeting its goals to be moving forward, then essentially after 18 months it vests for the full 5 years, and then there would be renewal criteria where we could make a decision after 5 years on whether to renew or not. There would be shared governance of the SPE. The GTS Smart City Consortium, as well as their financing investors, would have ultimate operational control. We would be on a strategic advisory board that would be we would appoint one or more members to a strategic advisory board, which would be responsible for coming up with a strategic marketing plan and assisting in making the strategic decisions that the actual board of the SPE would implement. There are commitments in the agreement which still remain to be fleshed out, but there is one of the things that we have committed to as a matter of principle, but still needs to be fleshed out in terms of metrics, are benefits for economic development in the region, as well as for historically disadvantaged communities. We are beginning to work through metrics on those issues, as well as ways of dealing with contingencies and emergent situations under those issues. The SPE has secured financing, a financing commitment moving forward, and it is looking forward to building middle mile laterals and then opening up those middle mile laterals as well as service to last mile, both for themselves as well as to others on a potential open access model. The SPE and its members will be responsible for actively marketing and soliciting additional users of the RCR, as well as the system that it would build out from the RCR. We have also discussed having dark fiber for community anchors and for institutional users such as universities and governmental users at defined prices, at least within the first term. There's also provisions which very much need elucidation, but in principle we have agreed to a gross revenue sharing clause in this agreement as well. And at this point that remains a proprietary matter, exactly what that amounts to, but that is included as well. Those are the main points of the agreement. I'm certainly open to questions, and if I've missed anything important, Mr. DeBerry, Mr. Crum, please feel free to correct me.
Are there any questions from board members? All right. Any other actions for this item?
Ma'am, you just need to open up the public hearing
Yep.
and ask if there are any comments from the public. I believe that's it.
We're all set. All right. With that, I will do just that. Are there any comments? Wow, quiet bunch. I think we've done our work here. All right. Any other options? Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will go on to item number 6, which is our meeting minutes, which we don't have meeting minutes to approve. So we'll move on. Those will be available in just January meeting. So we'll move on to the project. Yes.
Do we need to close the public hearing?
I'm sorry, we do need to close the public hearing. Thank you. Mr. Lockaby, is there language that we need to use, or? can we
There's
just-
nothing in particular. I sort of treat it as you're having moved to the next agenda item as
Yeah.
effectively closure.
I think-
But if you,
But
it's
if you want to
certainly-
actually,
certainly
the
good
public comment time is over.
But thank you, Mr. Moore.
But thank you,
That
Mr.
is
Moore.
proper
You could
procedure.
say- You could say, speak now, forever hold.
That's right, speak now or forever hold your peace,
Well,
exactly.
Just to confirm though,
Yeah.
Mr. Lockaby, you made the comment that you would be accepting public comment over the next 30 days. I was trying to understand when you made that comment, how that affects this public hearing being closed.
We will people can continue to make written comments on this up until the board's next meeting on January 13th, which, if everything is going right, we will have a
We should
final
have.
agreement for you to take action.
Exactly. Okay. Good, thank you for that clarification. All right, anything else before we move on?
I'm trying to read Mr. Moore's
I
mind.
know, Mr. Moore is kind of looking like he has
So
some,
is it closed or we didn't close?
We're closed for the stand up and speak public hearing, but written comments can
will
come
still be available.
if people wish to submit them.
And I appreciate the board's,
No, that was a good clarification, Mr. Moore.
if I was off track, I'm sorry.
No, not at all.
Throw
No.
you out.
Ow, come on, man. No, that's important. I'm glad that you pointed that out. All right, so again, we're down now to the project management update with, I believe we're back over to our illustrious executive director.
Thank you. Could you load up a slide, please? Okay, so hopefully I'm going to give you guys some executive time back since the public hearing was abbreviated. So, we had a quick turnaround, only 2 weeks since our last meeting, so I just wanted to give you a really quick update on where we are with regards to the project. In your backup files is a copy of the permitting and construction timeline that we addressed last time, as well as maps for both the Portsmouth in-kind and the Chesapeake co-build. We anticipate by early April that we'll have 78 miles of permitting and a degree of percentage of that construction underway. We have signed the official notice to proceed with Danella on 1 December. And so 18 months, that gives us roughly a 30 June 2024 completion date. We're going to keep our pedal to the metal to try to beat that date, but that's contractually where we are. We're continuing to work the details of the Portsmouth in-kind and Chesapeake co-build. There's some action items that Mike and I are working with the city staffs on. We'll present that after the first of the year, but we have time to do that right. And Portsmouth and Chesapeake will work with staff to provide a package that you can present to city council to meet your needs. We continue to work with multiple stakeholders. A project this large, you can imagine, we're working with VDOT, and there's some in-kind propositions. We're working with them for access to tunnels and certain bridges. DHCD, we would still like to continue to influence state policy moving forward on how VATI funds and other grants are pushed out. Also, Army Corps of Engineer, DEQ, and the railroads. We have over 37, if you remember, we have over 37 special crossings, railroads, water, bridges. So it's a pretty 119 miles are pretty complex. And as we said when we were going through the governance, strategy is good, execution is tough. And so we're in execution now. And I think we're doing really well. Very, very pleased with our GTS and Danella partners. We meet bi-weekly. And then the off by weeks, we meet with the CIOs, so I think we have good communication going there. They're really a pleasure to work with. As Mike briefed you, we're still in the process of PPA negotiations that will be ongoing. And just a reminder, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We still are in the running for the NTIA grant for the peninsula and tunnel crossings. I mean, this would be huge for our project in that it's really a $37 million grant. The two cities of Williamsburg and, Newport News and Hampton and SNA are asking for $22 million in federal grant money. Cities of Newport News and Hampton are producing $15 million of in-kind. So they are buying into this project if we win. Almost 30% of the cost of this project would be the tunnel crossings for the Hampton Roads and Monte Merrimack. So this would be a real kickstart for our project. We'll keep our fingers crossed. February 16th is the date, notional date for decisions. And if we're successful, then we're going to quickly try to leverage some of our prior effort for design and construction, because you get about 5 years to process the monies on an NTIA grant. We certainly don't want to wait that long because we're tying in tunnel crossings and other things with this project. So keep fingers crossed. This would be really great. Bob's team working with Peninsula and CTC who helped put the grant together just did a fabulous job. A lot of work went on in that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Trump, and your team. That's an amazing, and on a very compressed timeline, so thank you so much for that.
Sure. And as I said, I have the backup slide for the permitting and construction process. We'll have close to 70 miles when we factor in the Chesapeake and Portsmouth in-kind and co-build projects. So are there any questions on where we are now?
Any questions? Mr. Lottery, you look like you were about to say something. All good? Okay. All right. Was that it, Mr. Barry, or do we have?
That's all for the project update.
All right, do you want to move on to the budget?
Yes. Now, this is a placeholder budget for the cities who are going into through their budget process. I'm proposing roughly $352,000, what I'd call G&A budget, it represents a 1% increase over last year, certainly below inflation. Just wanted to explain just a couple of things. It's obviously mostly G&A and salary. My package includes salary, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, but there are no other traditional benefits that I'm receiving. Our MOU with HRPC has been expanded a bit as we're now moving into construction, and we're seeing invoice payment and other issues that require a little bit more work. But I can tell you, for $55,000, the value in kind here is just terrific. We'd get half an accountant for that. So, we're getting really good value from Bob for our clients. Legal counsel moving forward, the next 6 months will be, I think, really heavy lifting for Mike, but going forward as we transition, there will be other opportunities that we'll look at. So this is a placeholder for him. Not a lot of travel and supplies, liability insurance is roughly the same as last time. And I've got a placeholder for municipal financial advisor that we have on retainer just in case we need some support with the P3 moving forward. What's not in here, and I just want to bring it up for informational situational awareness, there's no a line item for marketing, because as we move forward, if it's something we're going to have to talk about, but basically if we come to agreement with GTS, we're in a 5-year exclusive agreement. So we'll have to think about what marketing means, what we can do internally working with city staffs. But that's kind of where I'm at on that right now. So roughly $70,000 per city, 1% more than the last time. And then I think just briefly, we didn't go through the notes because we'll have those for the last meeting. But I think the key takeaways there was we spent a lot of time on where I thought we were financially, and where we landed is we would have up to a $330,000 asset for the project, taking into account the Portsmouth in-kind and the Chesapeake co-bill. But I believe the result of the authority was that each city would go back and request roughly $500,000 in CIP money for fiscal year 24 that would be available for change orders.
And just to clarify, Mr. DeBerry, and I don't want to steal your thunder if you were about to say something as well.
No, go ahead, no.
But to be absolutely clear on what that means is a request to have $500,000 appropriated if it's absolutely needed, but not for it to actually be transferred to the authority unless the authority had some sort of emergent issue that needed to be dealt with. The hope is that that money will not actually be necessary, but we don't want. The objective of Mr. DeBerry, I believe, is to make sure that we don't have to go to each council and get an appropriation in an emergent situation.
Thanks, Mr. Luckby,
Yes, sir.
for adding that.
Well, we can either capture that in the minutes, or maybe we can just put together a quick paragraph and send out to the cities if that would be.
I think it would be good to have that paragraph, because I think that, it is helpful to be able to have that consistency across all 5, like we did sort of before with so many of the other things that we've had to approve, in each location. So if that would be okay, I'd appreciate that.
Also, we continue to partner with CTC and Danella for value engineering and cost avoidance. There is at least one additional bridge crossing in Portsmouth that might be available for an in-kind type, where we can leverage. Portsmouth has a pretty difficult bridge crossing that they've already put in 4-inch conduit, so there's a possibility. We're looking engineering, talking to your staff about another in-kind to utilize 2-inch conduit to put our fiber in there. So it would be one that you've already had the sunk cost of building your network, but we could come back and save money for the authority and reimburse. So that we're looking at things like that. There's at least one that's a very serious candidate.
Good, good. Always looking for those opportunities. Ms. Weitzel.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about the budget. And Stephen, this is proposed, but the liability insurance, is that for the board, or is that now
Yes.
need to be expanded to cover the project as well?
So the SNA liability insurance really it covers malfeasance, it covers lawsuits, it covers an environmental, sort of a standard liability policy. There is additional insurance that's coming out of the project money. For instance, I have to have a surety bond for at least the first year for each city, and they range from $50,000 to $100,000. And I also have a letter of credit that I've given to each of the cities for $25,000, which is just a standard contract language from the agreement. So those are coming out of project dollars. I hope after a year to be able to come back and say, can we not pay this anymore, but right now we are.
Ms. Weitzel, with respects to the insurance, I know that each of the cities, y'all are big enough that you have your own bespoke self-insurance plans. But for smaller public entities, there's a statute called the Virginia Local Government Self-Insurance Pools Act. And for smaller entities such as authorities, small towns, counties that are very small, they will pool and form one self-insurance entity, and we have joined one of those entities. So it's not actually a for-profit insurance company. It's a self-insurance pool with a TPA, and they give us, I can't remember what it is, but it's several $1 million both in property and personal injury liability, as well as director and officers coverage.
Yeah, my question was, I figured that was the board given that small amount, but as we get stuff under construction, are we considering not self-insuring, using the city self-insurance for a major outage on the ring, or something along that line for protection of the ring? And
I'll come back to the board and verify this, but I believe I have the option via our current insurance carrier to cover that type of. So right now I'm doing the minimum cyber, for instance. I think it's like a $500,000 cyber, but I don't have any cyber right now except my personal computer. So we'll expand the cyber coverage, and a lot depends on the negotiations with GTS and what, but we definitely will be responsible for the 119 miles.
Any other comment? Oh,
I just wanted to clarify the 500,000, just to make sure I have a shared understanding to take back to the city. So the $500,000 request is for 7/1/23 for the next year's budget. So we can do this in our CIP process at our respective cities to be approved this spring. And then if the SNA needs the funds, they will contact staff. And it could be an amount, it could be a small amount, an amount less than 100,000, just depending on the change orders, if there's change orders and what amount, and there's always change orders. Is that accurate?
Yes, because if you remember from last time, the original contract award was about $24.5 million. We were able to have savings of $2.5 million or so that we'll use to, for two portions of the project. But that's razor thin. I mean, that's, we cut out all the shale rock, certain, things like that. But if we run into so I can tell you, I mean, we've already done some maneuvering because of things like 24-inch high-pressure natural gas lines. I mean, when you get into the project, you see stuff. There was no change order there. We were able to do that at no cost, but, stuff happens. So that $2 million really is an insurance policy if needed.
Okay. And part of, I believe at a previous meeting, we discussed that part of the landscape of this is the SNA as a startup, and this is not unusual, that there's not a lot of reserves and money for unexpected issues. So that's part of the landscape of this. I'm just thinking how we're pitching this to the city manager and city council.
When Ms. Weitzel helped us put together the original agreement that everyone signed, I mean, we saw the need for that. There's language in there about, monies like this. But,
Great.
So we sort of followed the directions, but it was more,
But yes, what you're saying is correct.
And we'll put together a paragraph that kind of capsulizes that.
Any other questions?
I think what we did, what we did agree though is we would make that bill, if you would, for all cities, however, recognizing that in Portsmouth's case, that amount could be adjusted based on, but we think in fairness, there's always going to be a bill for each city, and then we go from there.
Great. All right, then I need a motion to approve the proposed budget.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Do we need a roll call vote since it's a budget, or is it?
You don't need a roll call vote unless you feel strongly to have one. Actually, approving a budget is very easy for an authority to do by contrast to a city. But if you'd like to have a roll call, there's certainly nothing against it.
Okay, well, let's just go ahead and we'll go the regular route. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, budget is passed. All right, I think that brings us to old and new business. Does anyone have any old or new business to share?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to take a moment and to take a point of personal privilege and say thank you to our inaugural chair of the Southside Network Authority. You have done an extraordinary job. You've given so much time, and you've always led great meetings. They're always fun to be with you at, and I just want to say thank you. And if others would like to add some comments, but you are a gifted business person who understood the technology, and you were able to move what is very unusual, getting 5 cities to commit equally $5 million each into Great Authority, and that is extraordinary, and you should be very proud. I'm proud of you, and I love working with you.
Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate the kind words, but honestly, it's all of you. It's the fact that we did it together. So thank you. I appreciate it. And right back at you. It's been a privilege.
Any other?
Right.
I want to thank you from the city of Virginia Beach. I mean, this was game changing, and we were all here at the very beginning to lead the charge, and you were the leader of the charge. So you worked very, very hard and always had a positive attitude. And I want to thank Andrew for her comments because they were spot on. And thank you
so much,
for
Rosemary.
all your hard work.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Mr. Moore.
I can't say ditto because it was already done, but
The public comment time is over, Mr. Moore.
of course, I haven't been on the full journey with all of y'all. I came in only 2 years ago on this, but the enthusiasm is what I've always sort of seen here, and it makes stuff like this enjoyable when sometimes it's not that enjoyable. So,
Say it, Joe.
but again, from Suffolk standpoint, we appreciate everything you do to lead us forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated. I think, it's just been such a great opportunity. I mean, think about what we've done. I mean, it's, we can, and I do appreciate the kind words, and it's been exciting, and it's been my passion for these last, how long has it been? 4 years? 3 years? We've been at this for a long time. But it's gone fairly quickly. When you look at what we've accomplished, you know, when you talk about moving government, and I don't care whether you're at the federal level, you know, state level or local level, having spent 26 years in the Navy, I can tell you that, you know, moving government it's a juggernaut sometimes, and especially when it comes to having to, you know, create funds and make sure that people are all rowing in the same direction. And I'll tell you, it takes all of us, and you all have just been such a pleasure to work with, and I have thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. And I'm really proud of where we all have come together. We are at a point now where we've put shovels in the ground. I mean, what we've done here is pretty unique. So, thank you, appreciate it.
And I would say that I have to say that these 119 miles are powered by Diet Coke.
Yeah, that's true. It's so true, it's so true. I leave you a Diet Coke stash somewhere, so. All right,
think Mr. Crum.
Oh, Mr. Crum.
Ms. Vitale, again, I'd echo everything everybody said, but on behalf of the HRPDC staff, and I know your executive director, Mr. DeBerry, we just want to wholeheartedly thank you. I can't even imagine as a regional person, I look at you all as local elected officials and know the responsibilities you have in your localities, the responsibilities you have at home, and you all find the time to come here and be part of this. And Ms. Vitale, Stephen, I don't know if there's ever been a time that I wonder if Ms. Vitale's available to solve a problem with us. And we sent her a text, and what happened, Stephen? Immediate response. You've always been available. I know you've supported Stephen through this, but we just want to sincerely thank you from a staff perspective and would ask one favor. So we have Matt here with his camera, and he's really good at photos. We would be honored. We have the Chesapeake flag in the middle. But could perhaps the board members all join Ms. Vitale? We'd love to get a couple of photographs of everybody that we could then send to Ms. Vitale for her to have as a keepsake, if that would be okay?
That would be wonderful.
In the case of Diet Coke.
Yes, and I'd love it if the
An
board
alternate.
members could, and you can take your can of Coke.
Yeah, Diet Coke too.
Man, if you wouldn't mind, we'll,
So, do we want to go ahead and just
why
conclude
don't
the
we
meeting and do
conclude
it
the
after?
meeting, and then you can go
Okay,
ahead.
that sounds like a
Okay,
plan.
Thank you.
That sounds great, and thank you so much again for those kind words. You know, you all have just been so incredibly supportive. Really, this would not have happened if it hadn't been, you know, Bob, everything that you've brought to the table, and so very much appreciate everything. I've learned a lot from you, and somehow everybody I talk to says the same thing, that every time they work with you, they learn a tremendous amount, so thank you for that.
I shouldn't say this, but jokingly, can a couple of those people talk to my wife?
There's a list, we'll get it to you, okay? Great, well, thank you so much, everybody. Any other old or new business that needs to be discussed? All right, well then, this meeting of the Southside Network Authority is adjourned.
All right.